If the opposition were scared of us before, I wonder what they're thinking now that our captain is back. This is the Arsenal Vision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, I think this Olympiakos game may not be remembered for much. As Tim has pointed out, there have been plenty of games in Champions League table and group phases down the years that we won in sort of ho-hum fashion and weren't remembered and weren't talked about. And this may wind up falling into that category, except that it might just be the Martin Odegaard game, and we're going to spend some time talking about that because he looked real good. And a real good Martin Odegaard, I think, just adds a dimension, adds a layer to the onion that already was very oniony, if you know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm saying, so just so we're clear, it's not entirely clear what I'm saying. But what I will say to you is that we did a rewatch of the Newcastle game. Over on Patreon, we did an episode that I thought was super fun because we did a piece on Howard Webb and his gaslighting on Sky. Then we did a bit on Trouble in Paradise at Liverpool. And then we did the Newcastle rewatch. Obviously, Clive was involved in this endeavor, and it was brilliant. But tomorrow, we have something even more special. Friday night, Clive will be preempted because I'm going to Chicago to see Paul and see the Chicago Gooners at Goonerpalooza. And if you are going to be in Chicago, come out to the Globe. We posted information all over the place, but if you need to look it up, you can find the Chicago Gooners information and see us for a Q&A podcast type thing. And then there'll be celebratory partying and all kinds of good stuff for the West Ham game because West Ham at home, when has that ever gone wrong? The less said about that, the better. So tomorrow, John McKenzie, the tactical guru, and Clive Palmer, also tactical guru, will be on a podcast hosted by me, not a tactical guru, to talk tactics. So I will say things like, John, your thoughts? And Clive, what would you say about that? It's going to be great. Come join us. AVP50 is the code. You get it for a couple of quid. You can see what you think. But if you don't want to do that, just stay here. We've got great stuff for you all the way through the season, including the impending international break next week. So let's go out in style this weekend. Hope to see you in Chicago. Hope to see you over at Patreon. Happy to see you here. And here now is Paul. Hello, Paul.
Woo-hoo.
How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Great.
This is old school. Before we even met Tim and Clive, when it would just be you and me shouting at each other while you tried to gaslight me into thinking that Francis Coquelin was a great midfielder. Do you remember those good old days?
Yeah, though, not to get into an argument with you, my point was that Santi Cazorla plus Francis Coquelin was a great midfield.
It's just impossible for me to disagree about anything that has a valence of praise for Santi Cazorla. So I will simply lay down my weapon. You know the gif of Michael Jackson taking the gun tip down, just taking it down. I'm going to set down my gun on the Santi Cazorla, Francis Coquelin midfield issue because it feels less pertinent now somehow.
Yeah, it does. Though maybe the more important part of your comment was back in the day when it was you and me, I always had this idea that like you were Lennon, I was McCartney, and that we were forming the best little rock and roll band on the planet. That was what we were trying to do with the podcast. And we'd get in Ringo and we get in George Harrison and build up our little pod. And unfortunately, over time, I became George Harrison and then I dropped down to Ringo. So I think...
Well, I mean, yeah, I was going to say you and I are Ringo and Harrison and Tim or Lennon and McCartney. But, you know, honestly, they all did okay. Mm-hmm. Well, not in the end, some of them.
I'm not even the best drummer in the band. That's my problem.
We've all got problems to work through. Okay, so with that nonsense out of the way, look, we can do waffle. It's not just Andrew's
domain.
Let's
waffle some more. You don't put layers on an onion. That's the whole point of an onion.
Is you peel the layers off.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, injuries have been peeling layers off our onion, but now we are getting back to full fitness.
Got a big onion. We could.
I really enjoyed
second huge onion. Sorry.
Sure. I really enjoyed the moment during the game last night when they panned to the bench and it's Saka and it's Timber, right? And it's Declan Rice. And you just see the volume of talent that they're panning across on this bench. And it's like, and then they pan to the tunnel and it's Kai Havertz, right? And it's Hincapié and it's Gabriel Jesus and it's
feel the depth.
Yeah, just real good players still to come back and join us. So really good. Okay, let's do this though. Before we get into our game, let's rewind a bit. We're not going to do the Howard Webb complaining thing. We do enough of that, and I think it can get tedious. But if you want to hear thoughts on the gaslighting, Clive and I did that. But yeah, he's just an inept fool. Anyway, let's look around the Champions League, because before we played, there were a few games played on Tuesday that were kind of interesting, and some games that were played the night we played that were interesting. But on Tuesday, Liverpool lose. Mamardashvili gets injured. I believe Ekitike is injured, although I don't know how bad, and with international break coming up. Mamardashvili didn't get injured. Alisson got injured. Mamardashvili obviously came in and played. Ekitike injured. They lose in Turkey. And just sort of surveying the scenes around them, Slot has been a little bit rattled, I would say, just a little bit with some of his comments, and their fans seem a little annoyed. I think they're catching on to the idea that they've been getting away with it, and there seems to be a little concern there. So, any thoughts on Liverpool losing and directionally where they're headed at the moment?
It does feel like there's been a mean reversion in some of the stuff going on. But like a bit of recency bias. I mean, the penalty against them with Galatasaray, pretty early in the game, they had a lot of game to play and did not score a goal in the whole. It's not like you can say, oh, they got super, super unlucky. And I do say this about Arsenal when we don't score. You got to score one goal. No matter what you think was going to happen in that game, you got to be able to score one goal. And I kind of feel a bit of mean reversion. Might be a little shock to their system, to the invulnerability. They had it last year where they were winning and they weren't good, but they kept winning all the time. This season, they've been good but patchy, or good but vulnerable and winning. And like last minute goals and stuff, and like they've lost that over the last couple of games, and we've gained it. So I think, and when you just listen to the narrative that we've said, don't listen to narratives except for when it's good and they're saying good things about you. Now you listen to the narrative and it's all, Arsenal are back in this, Arsenal are favourites, Arsenal are, so yeah, they'll have heard all that. We'll see how they respond. I'm sure they'll respond, but like, I think psychologically, we're in a good spot, right? It's, nothing's achieved here, but I think psychologically we're in a good spot, a bit between our teeth. They'll probably be hoping for an interlull, and they're about to get one to do the old reset. But I think we'd be very happy where things are, and they have been reminded that they are human, mortal, vulnerable, that not all the things are going to go their way, and that maybe not just mean reversion over a couple of games, but maybe it might be mean reversion for them over a couple of seasons. So,
yeah. I mean, look, and you might say, why focus on the Liverpool of this? I still think this is a season that's going to come down to our ability to win the title being somewhat tied to the performance of Manchester City and Liverpool. I still think City are in that group, even if some people think they're more distant. But when I look at Liverpool again, it was 1.7 to 1.7 XG. Now, a big chunk of that for Galatasaray came on the penalty that they were awarded, but you could see them running through them at times. And I think if you look at the hypothesis about Liverpool going into this season, they're losing one of the great ball progressors in history in Trent. They're integrating a lot of new attacking pieces, but had largely left the midfield the same, which I thought looked just a little bit light. And they were changing their approach to the edges of their defense, the flanks. And the Gyökeres thing hasn't really worked out. Frimpong started as a right-sided attacker instead of Salah, with Szoboszlai playing fullback. Szoboszlai has been their best fullback, but starting to get found out maybe a little bit, because as much as I think he is a sensational player, he's not really a fullback. Look, we tried the Saka at fullback thing, right? And it worked at times because he was really good, but it can only work at times. It can't work all the time. And so at least until January, fullback looks like an issue. Konate looks like, he's spending too much time on Duolingo instead of the training ground. And they have the attacking prowess, and I think they will score a lot of goals, that will happen for them. But all the theories of the case of where they could be vulnerable look like they're coming, at least not to full fruition, because they're still very good. Look, they're top of the table. They're going to be fine. They're going to be good. But I think there's vulnerability there that should give us encouragement that if we just focus on ourselves, there's a lot there for us. In terms of another result, Manchester City were pegged back. And this is just the thing with them, is that they have not been able to close the back door for quite a while now. And it's so interesting to see a Manchester City team that can't just control a game. They wind up drawing 2-2 to Monaco, 1.4 to 1.4 on XG in that one. Any thoughts on City? Because, now as we look at the Champions League table, Arsenal in 5th, one of 6 unbeaten teams. A number of them, the ones you'd expect: Bayern, Real, PSG, Inter, and, of course, Karabag. We are one of 2 teams, along with Inter, that have not conceded a goal through 2 games. But as you scroll down, City in 8th with a win and a draw. Spurs in 9th with a win and a draw. Newcastle, a win and a loss. Big win over Gauloise. What's it called? Am I thinking of a cigarette? I think I've just named a French cigarette.
They played Gitan.
I don't think that's right. I'm pretty sure that's not right. It's Union SG, San Gauloise, I think. But anyway, so apologies on that. But then you scroll down, it's Chelsea in 18th with a win and a loss, and it's Liverpool in 17th. So look, it's through 2 games. I expect they get through comfortably. But any other thoughts then around the Champions League, maybe the performance of City or Chelsea or any of the other teams that we might consider relevant?
Well, like the City one I like, because here they have the hottest property, the most on fire striker on the planet.
Another 2 goals in this game.
Yeah. All their goals, just a couple of touches, fantastic stats. They should be screaming away through it. And it's like they're very, very good at passages of football, but they're ever so vulnerable. And I like that. It seems very slightly parody-esque, Guardiola, this version of his team, where he's thrown a lot more stuff at the wall, Guardiola-type clever players. And a lot of them maybe the original kind of Barcelona build and lightness and stuff. So they got lots of good players. They're going to have some good results. But they just don't look built for seasons, right? They don't look built for the Premier League. They don't look... if they fall away on the Premier League, I guess they can start to focus on the Champions Leagues. But at the moment, at least, I find them interesting, slightly comedic. And interesting that they can set up a team such that they get the best striker on the planet who's in tremendous form, and like it's helping them, but it's not changing the world for them.
It's nuts. Erling Haaland in the Premier League is averaging 1.34 expected goals per 90. Now that's through 6 games, but that's nonsense. Like that is just complete nonsense. We've never seen anything like it. He's got 8 goals through 6 games in the Premier League, 3 goals in 2 games in the Champions League. By the way, I think it goes without saying that if he were to miss any time, City could then look very, very pedestrian, very ordinary. But at the end of the day, we'll get to the Arsenal stuff now, but to me, Paul, what I see is an Arsenal team that is rounding into the kind of form where we just look like a very balanced, stable team. The attack looks a little more attacky. The defense continues to look pretty good, even though we had some vulnerable moments maybe against Olympiacos that we'll get to. But overall, the balance and the depth of the team is playing out the way we hoped. We just look really solid game in, game out, while the teams that we will presumably be up against for things like the Premier League title have clear weaknesses that they don't seem to have fully addressed. So far, hypothesis checking out a little bit, and that's encouraging. So let's get to the Arsenal game against Olympiacos. This is one of those games that can be a little tricky. You're coming off a really emotional, physical, big energy exertion win at the weekend, and you've got to round up the focus to do it again. And I think that's where the manager has the benefit of being able to just shuffle the deck a little bit, shuffle the pack, change up the lineup, and get some players in there that are still hungry. I'm curious what you thought of the lineup he picked and maybe some of the players that weren't included.
Very interesting lineup. You could, I think going back a couple of weeks ago, you might say this is our B lineup for the wingers. But is it really, or is it... of course, Saka's always going to start, but it just feels... I think Arteta's got the team, the club, the squad, and the supporters, and even the pundits all on board with the, it's a big squad and we're playing players, horses for courses, players in this game. You don't look at the moment, I don't think so much he's heavily rotated. There's two ways to rotate. Oh, it's a heavy rotation for the... No, he's rotating for games. Now, part of it's put upon us, but the teams are playing well, certainly lately, where whatever way you come about it, you're kind of happy with who goes out on the pitch and what that combination is. So for me, when where's my eye go to on this game? We rotated wingers, you might say. We rotated full backs, and we bring in Ben White, Miles Lewis-Skelly. I'm sure we'll talk about Ben. Like he's obviously still coming up the curve in terms of fitness and sharpness. Miles Lewis-Skelly I thought was maybe fantastic is slightly too strong a word, but when
I think that's right.
Yeah, especially when you haven't seen him for a little while. This was one of his. He was good going both ways, and he just popped because you're like, you haven't seen him for a little while. He was great. You felt you lost nothing without No, you always lose something without Calafiori, but it felt like you lost nothing. His attacking prowess, his crosses, where he played on the pitch. Like if you look at the touch map, the right full backs were kind of in the corridor along the right, but Miles Lewis-Skelly's doing the thing in the midfield, moving around.
It's a shame his cross for Martinelli wasn't tucked away with that header because it's just perfect. Yeah. It's just absolutely perfect. And unfortunately, Martinelli gets the timing just wrong. I think it goes off his shoulder a bit and still just wide of the post.
It's a teeny bit behind him. Of course, he should bury it. He's got all that goal to hit.
Headers are hard, but yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of room to pick it out. I mean, the funny thing is he could probably even bring it down. It's so much time in the box there. It's such poor defending. And I have to say that I was going to say, can I say something on it? Because the problem with that particular movement is that becomes what that whole moment was about. But obviously this happens in the first 90 seconds or something. We start really hot. It's a fantastic section of play. It's almost emblematic of large chunks of this game, the best parts of this game, where we're moving it from right to left, up, down, around. Martinelli's run itself is of interest because I like Martinelli when he has the license or the opportunity to get central, to be a second striker or the striker, make the run in behind. And that's what this was. Like he's on Gyökeres's show. It's coming up the left-hand side. Beautiful bit of play as we spin it across the pitch. Back forward. Miles Lewis-Skelly has a little bit of space. Heads up. Picks out the ball. It's perfect. But maybe it wasn't perfect. Maybe he was aiming for Gyökeres, and it just overshoots a little bit. And that's the beauty of Martinelli getting in there from the right-hand side. We've seen him do it from the left too, but I do like from the right how often he got central as a second striker. And what better than to have two targets to hit rather than one? It's one of the things you like about Martinelli. I much prefer when we get Martinelli off the wing, because people seem to have figured that out. But what they haven't figured out is those runs. I mean, he's straight line, aggressive, fast, and he calls for it too. So maybe Miles Lewis-Skelly was trying to do exactly that, because Martinelli sticks the arm up to say, "Hit me." He hits him. Unfortunately, it hits his shoulder. But that whole passage of play is emblematic of what we did in the best parts of this game. Lovely football, free flowing, and it's a shame we'll keep talking about how Martinelli missed a nailed-on sitter, which it mostly was. Yeah, I think because this game was 1-0 for so long and there were a couple nervy moments late, it would be easy to misinterpret it. This is 2.7 to 0.5 expected goals. This was a game that should have been out of sight much, much earlier. And Mikel Arteta made that point in his post-match comments. He said, I think we started the game really well. I think we looked a real threat, really dynamic, really playing forward around a lot of threats, generally to the goal, another 2 or 3 big chances, and we don't put them away in this competition. You have to be careful. The first arrival of David had to make an incredible save to deny the goal, which you need in this competition as well. After that, we had moments of a lot of dominance, as you said, and some others that without control and dominating a direct play, we got a little bit deeper. And every time they put balls into the box with crosses, it's a team that is very, very dangerous. To me, it's just a case of not taking our chances. I want to talk about some of the big moments and the goal itself. But I think the best way to approach this game, because I don't know how difficult a competition this was really. It seemed like after we got the goal, we kind of went into comfort mode. But the most important takeaway from this game for me, Paul, is Martin Ødegaard's form. You know, he didn't have the season he wanted last season. He had the big injury. He came back. He never really hit full form. And while I don't want to overdo it with a performance against Olympiacos, this is Martin Ødegaard as we need him to be. All over the pitch, with that little bit of extra quality to create chances. The ball he plays that curls into Gyökeres' path is stunning. The pass he plays to Saka for the second goal is sort of reminiscent of the one he played to Miles Lewis-Skelly against Newcastle. He's got that ability to just spot that run and play the ball between fullback and center back so beautifully. He's been given license, it seems, to drift across the midfield areas. He's not just staying to the right side, and ironically, Saka was on the left side. So it was just a beautiful, all-encompassing performance from Odegaard. He went down hard on the shoulder once. He had some kicks on the ankle, and I think part of getting back to your full fitness when you've been out a lot is trusting that you can go down or get kicked and be okay, just trusting your body. But to me, Paul, this was Odegaard's night. This was a night for Martin Ødegaard to really get that form back that we've been missing for so long.
Yeah, he was great. Just, it's a continuation of what he did at the end of the Newcastle game as he dominated. He dominated this game all over the pitch, moving to wherever he needed to go, kind of bit Bernardo Silva vibes in his game, and just super clever. Apologies to the listeners to the instant reaction, but I can't get out of my head the idea that he looks like the haircut is everything. This
is the analysis they come for.
Yeah. The short, hard, harsh haircut. He looks mean. He looks angry. He looks pissed off. He looks like we just picked him up from outside a prison after 12 years hard time for a crime he did not commit, and he's there to make up lost time. And I do think he feels like he's there to make up lost time. I think last season stings him a bit, where he couldn't get to the levels for whatever reason. And he's an ultra consistent player. Like, I don't think he's particularly a form player. A bit like Saka, like give him a game or two and they're there. But that didn't happen last season. It must have been extremely frustrating for him that he never really got back to his levels. So definitely think he had physical issues he was working through the whole season, and now he just looks mean, angry, and ready, and he's making teams pay for it. He was great. The passing, everything, just the right choices all the time, and it looked like a simpler pass than it was. I think like he sets up Saka at the end of the game for the second goal that makes this all feel very comfortable at 2-0. It wasn't particularly comfortable, I don't think. We started great. We had periods of greatness, but they were pretty good. And maybe we'll talk about them a little bit. But at the end, Odegaard's looking around at various different things, and suddenly Saka picks him out for a 1-2. So, like, actually, if you look at him, Odegaard's not expecting to get that ball, and yet he sizes up immediately this angle pass straight back to Saka. Perfect pace, puts it right where Saka wants it. And there will be those who will say that Saka, there was a bit of luck. I mean, there's always a bit of luck in terms of the finish, but I think he absolutely meant that. I think he looked at going either side and thought, hang on, I'm going to blast it between his legs, because that often works. So I heard a lot of commentary from the pundits. We hate the pundits, saying that, lucky, this, that, like, no, I don't think so. I think that was a calculated, here's a really good spot that goals often come from. I'm going to put it right where the keeper does not want it, low, hard, and fast. And I thought it was a beautiful little bit of play between the two of them, understanding. And again, we're seeing Saka moving to the left-hand side. And my overriding feeling of the last couple of games is it's almost Wenger-esque in that, could it be 4-2-3-1? It often feels like that a lot of the time, the way we're playing the last few games. And maybe that's just what free-flowing football looks like at the moment. We don't have a handbrake. We threw it out the window. And it's been a very enjoyable period of play. So I find it fascinating at the moment, because I don't really know if this is just a couple of games, a small sample size, is because of, I don't know, where we're at or the narrative. But like, I'm really enjoying the free flowingness of it. At the end of the day, I don't really care. I want us to win this season. So it may just be we're going to see very structured games when that's what's right for it. And when the players available fit into that. Or the manager's just kind of letting it flow a little bit more. Or with Heinze, his assistant manager they've kind of had a little bit of a rethink and kind of, I don't know. I'm obviously really enjoying the fact that we're playing great football and we're scoring goals. And we're right up there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for me because obviously I've been pretty clear on this podcast in the past that I think the way you get really good is you have sort of a settled best 11 that you lean into, and they learn each other and they develop these automatisms. And maybe I've just got that totally wrong. Mikel seems prepared to really use the group. He showed that by starting Mosquera over Saliba in Newcastle, and then willing to take Mosquera off at halftime and bring Saliba on. He showed in this game, I'm going to give an hour to certain guys, and then I'm 58 minutes, they're coming off, and I'm bringing on different guys. And if we're able to win this way, I mean, obviously it makes us so much stronger because it means that in any situation, whichever players you put out there feel really ready to contribute. And I think it's important not just to manage the squad in terms of everybody feeling engaged and a part of the team. And we'll talk about some players that haven't been as engaged as they might want to be, but in terms of them all just being in form so they can come in and play at their best. It's just a massive, massive night for Odegaard. And I do think, and we'll talk about the goal, but I do think that one of the things we really want to develop is his relationship with Gyökeres. And you saw that starting to really percolate in this game, much the way Saka's relationship with him did against Newcastle, I thought. So Mikel spoke on Odegaard's performance, obviously. He said, quote, "He's got all the license in the world to go forward, Martin, and to play with that freedom and to play with that level of threat, especially not only with the passes, but the way he was taking the ball, carrying the ball, making runs, and arriving in really dangerous areas. I think he put 3 people through today to score a goal. He should have scored a goal as well, so great to have him back. He played some very good minutes in Newcastle to help us win the game, and I think today he was phenomenal. And since I'm not Tim, I won't remember it, but there was a moment when Nani Madueke got to the byline once this season and cut it back, and it just rolled right through the penalty box, and no Arsenal player was there. And in this game, Saka got to the byline, cut it back, and there's Odegaard. Boom. Arriving, great shot, well saved, follow-up, well blocked. Unlucky not to get his goal, but that's the stuff. When we get to the byline, that's his remit. Get onto those cutbacks and score from them. Also play Gyökeres in, play the runners in. He did all that. Not to mention all the running we're just so used to him doing. So it was really beautiful. Paul, let's just stay on the midfield for a minute, though, because the dynamic is a really interesting one. We saw sort of a box midfield against Newcastle with Rice and Zubi at the base and Éze and Leo further ahead. And in this game, it's a little bit of an interesting one because I think Leo is being used more as a midfielder, dropping deep, floating inside. But instead of having Calafiori holding the width, Miles was really in the midfield as well. And I wonder if this is just to give Marino license to kind of go wherever he needs to win duels and try to get up and support the attack. Zubimendi, maybe a step off the pace a little bit in this game, but that's a lot of central controlling kind of players between Miles and Leo and Odegaard and Zubimendi and Marino. So any thoughts just on the dynamic of how they were all interacting with one another and the midfield construction in general?
Yeah, like I don't think for Leo this was quite as an extreme example of him. Like in the Newcastle game, all his touches were central, like central. This one, it's kind of a slightly freer roll off the left, but it's still all his touches are along that side. And it really the midfield, and he's definitely, to your point, popping in where required, but he's not living there where he's kind of did against Newcastle. This was the Real Sociedad midfield, even if Martin Odegaard didn't really play with Zubimendi for more than a minute or two. And it was pretty free-flowing, trusting. I think we've all noted, and I continue to enjoy and be surprised when I see Zubimendi in any pocket of the pitch, including the attacking line ahead of the striker at times. He's absolutely his mantra, his creed is if there's a pocket of space that somebody needs to move into to make a pass, no matter how far up the pitch or how wide, somebody should step into that, and that's me. And with the way Odegaard moves around, Zubimendi moves around, and the opinions on Merino will vary, but I think he's at the bare minimum. He's intelligent and just moves to those spaces. And this was the other interesting aspect of the lineup was just this midfield and the way they play. And they don't get to play very often, so I'm liking what I'm seeing. It may be a function of who the team was. I don't know if that works quite as well in the Premier League, if it's a bigger, beefier midfield with a deeper defense and you're kind of having to do a little bit more work to... The game itself kind of created chances for both sides. It was an open game. You didn't need... I don't think you needed huge X's and O's on a board. You just need to play better at basketball than they did to some degree. We played open, flowing football. They had a back line that seemed to be... I don't know anything about their play, their centre backs, but it felt like they were midfielders playing in the back line for good and bad. From attacking standpoint, I think it definitely meant we had spaces to run into, players we could physically challenge. On the other hand, it meant they were very good at football over the pitch, and they were. And so I think, how much you read into this game, it was a challenging game, a good game, an exciting game. I don't know how transferable it is to other games coming forward, especially the Premier League in terms of that midfield. But look, it worked really well, and those guys have a really strong understanding. At the same time, we went up a gear when we brought on Declan Rice. There's no way of getting away from that, but then you always would. So interesting selections around the pitch, but that was definitely one of the features of this game. Zubimendi and Odegaard's understanding of each other and movement, and yeah, really good.
Yeah, I think we should probably just take a moment. I don't want to make a big thing about it because it's just not very interesting to say goalkeeper was great saves. But because goalkeeper chat sometimes isn't that interesting, you can overlook it. And I look at some of the other big clubs that don't get good goalkeeper performances and what that means to them. We have a keeper who is so important with his distribution. Some of his throws are brilliant. His timing of when to go versus when to hold it up. His long distribution is good. He plays with the ball at his feet. He cleans up the counterattacks. But these are the kind of games where you're winning 1-0 and you've kind of taken your foot off the gas a little bit because the opposition aren't at your level. And then, oops, we're 1-1. And now you've got to do it all over again. And you got to rescue it. And there's nerves. And you've thrown away points because your keeper wasn't totally switched on, because it's easy to lose your focus. But he didn't. He made an incredible save on Daniel Podence, who was fantastic, by the way. And kudos to him for what I thought was a really strong game across the board. Gave us a lot of problems, and his delivery was excellent. But that save, along with a couple others he made, really, really important just to ensure that you don't have a bit of an accident, right, in a game that you should be comfortably ahead in. So do you have anything you want to add on David Raya, or just sort of a pat on the back for him in a game where you could have forgiven Mikel if he said, I got to give this one to Kepa? And not to say that Kepa wouldn't necessarily have made that, but he didn't give it to Kepa. He gave it to Raya, and I think Raya played a big role in this one.
Yeah, I wouldn't make, Kepa may well have saved it, but even Raya on that save there, it's a phenomenal save. El Gato, the cat, right? His reactions are phenomenal. But even with all of that, he just about gets it over the bar. You see it from various angles. He's just about got enough. You have to not just have the reactions, do all the right things. It's almost perfection that he gets enough on the ball to lift it over. I think Tim made the point. I was listening to the Arsecast a little earlier. And, one of the things, you look for a couple of things from a top-class keeper when you're Arsenal, because they may not get worked that much or that often for saves. And one of them is being very involved in the game. For a guy, if you're only doing the stopper part of it, but that's not who Raya is, right? He's playing all over the the back end of the pitch. If he's not on the ball, he's looking to get on the ball. So he's continually part of our back line. In fact, he's just an extension of. So that keeps you engaged all the time, like mind-wise, whether he's got the ball at his feet or not. He's like, there's the two centre backs in him. It's a triangle, and he's moving all the time. He's up the pitch, back the pitch. Like often he might be out of camera shot because we're attacking, but he might be standing on the halfway line. So he has to be absolutely engaged, switched on all the time. And, it does him a service, but it certainly does us a service. He obviously has focused professionalism, and he's like one of the top keepers on the planet. I don't know on the brilliance curve, but on the consistent, near brilliance, always consistent, all-round game, distribution, cleverness, decision-making.
That's the thing. Finding a keeper who can be extremely reliable as a shot stopper and extremely reliable as essentially an extra outfield player, that's really hard. And you look at like a Manchester City that has to totally rework their build-up and how they play for a keeper that's not comfortable with the ball at his feet. It changes everything. So, yeah, we're really lucky to have him. I want to talk about Gyökeres' performance and what Mikel said about him, some of the players that came on late and some of the players that didn't. I think Ben White's worth a mention, so we'll talk about that a bit. And then I do want to do a West Ham preview. So let's take a bit of a breath for brands because, who doesn't want to do that? And then we'll carry on with some yoke talk. Okay, good enough. Paul, Viktor Gyökeres not scoring could lead people to, I think, just start to get antsy about him scoring goals. I feel the opposite. I feel better about this player over the last week or so than I did when he scored those couple of goals against Leeds and against Forest. On his performance, Mikel had some things to say. And let me read you out a couple of that. On Gyökeres chasing his next goal, what I sense is that he's doing better and better things every game. And today he was denied a few times on one of the blocks, and then he hit the post. But I think overall his performance was exceptional. Again, his work was really good. And yeah, we want him to be scoring goals. But if he doesn't do that, at least do everything he's doing for the team because he's helping the team a lot. And on whether the floodgates will open once he scores again, I don't know, but hopefully yes, and hopefully it will be on Saturday. The thing with Gyökeres, there's a couple of things. First of all, I think we're starting to see the all-around performance that there was worry we wouldn't see. I think the hold-up play is good. Physically, he's not getting moved. He's holding players off, and he's laying the ball on well. The timing of the runs and the understanding with his teammates is getting better. We're finding him in behind. I think he had one selfish moment where he could have played Martinelli in 2v1. But to be fair, Martinelli had a moment where he had a bad touch and really missed the chance to play Gyökeres in 2v1. He does hit the post for the goal. It's a beautiful run, well found by Odegaard. So there's that. And then the one where he doesn't play in Nelly, he was played in beautifully again by Odegaard. Got him behind his man again. There was the one where Leo played it to him and he cuts inside and he goes for the curler and he just lifts it a little too high. I think maybe a little too eager to score there. But these are all really nice moments from him. And the goal is obviously just about his goal. Martinelli, I think, does well, by the way, not to overrun it or, just to be cool with the last touch to tap it in. But I'm just increasingly encouraged, Paul, by how threatening he looks, which there were games that I think were passing him by, but they're not passing him by. He looked threatening against Newcastle. He looked threatening in this game. So I'm inclined to be really encouraged. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. So, yes. What comes to mind is that I heard various versions of the conversation, kind of settled with the idea that he's going to be one of those players that, there's going to be games where he just doesn't score and you won't rate him. But every 2 or 3 games, he'll get a goal, and that's why he's on the pitch. And what's interesting is we're talking him up over the last couple of games. Now, we won. That always helps. But we're talking up his overall contribution to the team. So I think that's maybe more. Of course, we always knew that he'd do a bit of hold-up play, a bit of connect the dots. But actually, we're kind of beginning to rave a little bit. Rave's probably a little strong, but certainly laud his contribution as an all-round player. over the last few games, which is maybe more than some of us expected a little earlier on, or as we were signing the player. He's definitely adding across the team, and his runs, like he stretches the pitch. And whatever happens in this chance, whoever they deliver the ball to, it's Odegaard to Gyökeres, as you were intimating. But like, there's options either side of him too. He's pulling that back line. He's got both defenders coming to him, both centre backs, and Leo and Martinelli zooming in from both sides. So he's created a situation, in fact, where three players are threatening the goal, and that's that run in behind, the power and the speed of his and the deliberateness of the run in behind. I think the other piece that I really like about this goal is it's funny how you overlook things when you go to the critical moment in it, as you should, which is Gyökeres. You know, he's actually behind the two centre backs. He powers through with power and pace. He powers through them and past them to get into pole position, which is in itself impressive. But what I really like about the goal is the Real Sociedad midfield. It's Merino picking it up at left back, carrying into midfield, clever pass to Zubimendi to Odegaard. Actually, I think it's, Zubimendi to Merino to Odegaard, Odegaard to Gyökeres. And look, Odegaard's played with run-in behind strikers for big chunks of his career. It just wasn't particularly at our better times at Arsenal, but he's played with Isak. He plays with Haaland. So you would expect he knows how to feed these guys. And you also expect that Gyökeres in the dressing room at halftime in games where he's not getting fed is making that point to everybody on the pitch that you're not feeding me. These are the runs I make. You know, in his mind, I'm supposed to be scoring 40 or 50 goals here, lads, and you're not feeding me. And that message is getting through, and we're hitting him. But a really nice bit of build-up, clever, involving the three midfield lads, finding each other, and Gyökeres just making the most of it. But Martinelli, one more time, being the second striker, getting all the way into the 6-yard box. And you start to see new life in Martinelli, where you had him just pegged for guy stuck on the left wing with paint on his boots, as I like to say, with totally figured out by the other team. Well, if we can get the game a little bit more flowing, you don't figure out Martinelli. He's going to make those runs in behind. And there's not too much, whether he finishes it or not is another matter, but there's not too much you can do about Martinelli's runs. If it's a little bit more free and open and flowing, he'll torch you and he'll be a second striker. So there's lots to like about that goal.
Yeah. Yep. So if there's a player that is going to regret this night a little bit, it's probably Leo. He came off and you can see him shaking his head on the bench. And I think the shaking the head was like, boy, there were goals out there for me. I think I don't love to engage in results-oriented analysis, because I think if you're getting good chances and you're just not finishing them, you've mostly played well, except for the last thing. So how do you analyze a game like that? Because Leo was in all the right places to get all the right big moments, but just didn't execute any of them with the final ball.
Yeah, especially when you consider that, like, what was it we always said, that probably the best finisher on the team, or one of the best finishers on the team, he missed two very presentable chances, kind of similar, where, you know, from the left-hand side, he can curl one into the far corner netting, and he's just way off on both of them. But look, that happens. I think he was a stock falling candidate for me when we talked about it yesterday. But you could say, because you expect a lot more from him, you would expect a lot more from any player playing off the left wing, but it happens. I think his overall game has been good the last couple of...
All right, let me ask you a trickier question then. How about this? Let's take it from a different angle. Who had the better performance, Leo or Martinelli? Because Leo had the more high-profile misses while Martinelli scored a goal. To my eye, Martinelli, and granted he's not playing on his strongest side, was not getting by his man or getting the final delivery right in times when we had counterattacks, but got a goal, whereas Leo was in the positions to really make the final impact, but didn't get it right. So you see what I'm saying, right? I think one
there's
has regret about his final ball. The other has maybe some regret about what happened before that.
Yeah. So I think there's 3 versions of that question. One is, who had the better game, the better performance. I think Leo had the better overall performance. Which thing worked better, the Trossard thing or the Martinelli thing? In a way, I think the Martinelli thing worked better. That dynamic. But the Martinelli getting in, second striker, that's a dynamic that I'd like to see taken forward. This particular Trossard game, it was good. He played well, his individual performance, apart from the finishing. And then the third part of it is Leo kind of sucked on taking shots, so that's a downgrade. But I do think the Martinelli thing is there's something there, you know what I mean? Something you want to take forward, ways of using that. Getting him central when we're attacking their back line.
Where he winds up for that header that he misses, that's a really interesting thing, right? The way he makes that run and the way we switch positions around, and he winds up dead center of the box unmarked.
And the goal he finishes off for Gyökeres.
Yep.
He's the first guy to the left-hand post. He's beaten all their defense and our attack to get there. So there's something to take forward there. There are many. The mountain looks different from depending on where you stand looking at it.
Yeah, and again, I think everybody was largely fine in this game. One player who maybe a lot of I think people noticed wasn't probably at the absolute top is Ben White.
Yeah,
and this is a tough conversation because the thing we know about Ben White is his body has just not been able to deliver for him over the last several seasons. He's had knee and hip and groin injury. He's had a ton of injuries. He's played through them. He's an absolute warrior. Who knows if he's even properly fit right now, but you cannot play Timber every single game, or at least you wouldn't want to. Mosquera can probably play some right fullback, but he had to come on in this game for Gabriel Magalhaes, who, according to Mikel, is probably okay. And it's nice to have the luxury of not having to risk it and bring on a guy the caliber of Mosquera. But with Ben White, I think everybody adores that player. There was a moment in the 30th minute where Arteta kind of was instructing him angrily, and Ben White looked a little fucked off about it. But that's just how it goes. I don't think there's any problem there. But for me, then when Timber came on, you obviously saw a bit of a different level of performance. And I think what's really tough is when you've missed a lot of time with injury, what you really need is some time to come in and get back to your best. I remember with Aaron Ramsey, he obviously missed a lot of time with injury. And he did not look very good when he came back into the team. But you gave him 4 or 5 games, and if he could get a run of those games and stay fit, he would hit his best form again. And I just think with Ben White, how we find him the minutes to build back up his form and his fitness is going to be hard, but it certainly looks like he could use it because I thought he looked very rusty.
Yeah, and I think it's more rust and maybe a little bit less fitness because actually I thought in the second half, where I expected him to look a little tired or a little slow. I don't think that was it. I think, he runs half the length of the pitch and tracks down their wing. Like, he looks fast, he looks lean, but what he isn't yet is maybe confident in his own body, confident.
Well, Paul, he went down at one point, and I don't know if you saw this, he's down on all fours and he's doing like a hip flexor exercise, like stretching out his hip and his leg. And that's a kind of thing I feel like you do when there's something just bothering you or tightening up on you a little bit. You know what I mean? So I think there's something going on there.
Yeah, I think he has a lot going on, and it's one of those, he probably feels like he's fighting with one arm tied behind his back, but he gets absolutely done by the winger later on in the second half. And shortly after that, we see Timber, and just Timber comes on, extinguishes all hope on that side for their team. And he's just masterful, and you see that pop and the level and the consistency. And if he's not the best defensive fullback in the Premier League, I'm not entirely sure who is. He
is. Yeah, I mean he fantastic. Certainly is. Yeah.
It's not fair though. It's not fair on poor old Ben. You wake up and that's who you're playing, who you're facing off against, and you haven't had the full fit. It's not fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird how life works because I think Timber had come in to become a left back and Ben White was going to play right back. And then Timber does his ACL. And we develop some alternative options at left back. Then, because we have those alternative options, Timber becomes an option again for right back, and Ben White gets injured, and Timber comes in and dominates at right back, and then all of a sudden you don't have a position anymore. And that's just football sometimes. I remember
he's supposed to be a darn good centre back, and I think we've seen him a couple of times play centre back, and he's been really good. There's almost nothing that Timber lad can't do.
Yeah. Yep. Well, Mikel made an interesting point on squad depth and rotation. So, because I want to ask you about a couple of players. So he says, on the depth of our squad this season, quote, yeah, with all respect, last season we were looking and we had 5 academy players there that probably never played professional football in the Champions League. So yeah, it makes a difference. Today we decided to change 6 players. I think it was because I want everybody to be really involved and feel part of it. And it was great. And we had the feeling as well that physically we were dropping because we played in a really intense match in Newcastle a few days ago. The ones that came in, again, they lifted the level and they helped us win the game, and that's great. So this is interesting to me. There are a few players that are playing a lot right now. Viktor Gyökeres, another 90 minutes. I mean, he's just a machine. He plays every single game. And, you want Kai to get back, not just because you want that quality, but because you don't want Gyökeres to have to play every game. But Zubimendi's playing a lot. And I thought it was interesting that Nørgaard didn't get in this game. And I kind of wonder if the problem is with Merino in midfield and Nørgaard in midfield, you just maybe don't have enough of that on-the-ball progression and security to dominate the game in possession. Obviously Odegaard gets a lot of the ball. But Zubimendi did look just maybe a half step off it in this game and maybe someone who could use a bit of a break. It makes me wonder if it'll be Rice playing 6 at the weekend. Maybe we'll see the Odegaard-Éze Rice midfield that everybody's posited. Maybe it will be Nørgaard who will come in and get a Premier League game. But I'm curious what you think about that Nørgaard didn't get this game and Zubimendi may be looking a little jaded.
So I think it's a big step down in terms of how we play the Arteta's football without Zubimendi on the pitch. So he was going to play him. He wasn't going to play Kepa. He's taken nothing for granted in the second Champions League game of the season. And I know we're talking about heavily rotated, but you look at it and it's Leo and Martinelli and Odegaard, Zubimendi, Mikel Merino. He has high expectations of that midfield. He'll rest Rice because it's Zubimendi and Odegaard, but he won't rest Rice if it's Odegaard and Nørgaard, right? That's too much work to leave, or too much risk to take. So he wasn't really willing to back off one of his strongest teams too much. Miles Lewis-Skelly is not much of it's a difference to Calafiori in terms of your options, but it's not really a step down. It's a step sideways, right? It gives you different profiles. Ben White should be able to play near and around the level of a top fullback and desperately needed the game to get up to those levels. So I don't actually think there was, Gabriel and Saliba as your centre backs. He wasn't dialing it back much. He was rotating, but he wasn't really dialing it back. Like Ben White and Merino might be the only quibbles you might have. He's bringing Saka up to speed, getting the minutes. Like, you don't want to overdo it. He probably fully intended for Saka to get on kind of partway through the game. So I think it was all well calibrated. But to your Zubimendi point, I wouldn't read too much into it. I don't think he's jaded or tired. I'm almost certain, based on nothing, that Zubimendi will play at the weekend because that's how Arteta likes his football. And yeah, Zubimendi looked a little tired in this game, a little off, but then they just played Newcastle and give him a few more days. He'll bounce right back. I'm not concerned. My bet will be he'll have a really good game at the weekend. It happens, right? He's played a lot of football, and it's almost like he had a breather on the pitch rather than off the pitch. So I hear you, but I don't think he wanted to dial it back from Zubimendi style football.
Yeah. What about Ethan? He's been willing to use Ethan, and he's used Ethan this season in midfield, and I think Ethan's been good. I think if Mikel
There's
has any regret,
probably a game he would have fancied too, right? He likes that little bit of space, a little bit of openness, which we had here.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anyone in their midfield that could have lived with his dribbling and carrying. But like, this is where I think Mikel will be frustrated with like Leo, right? Because I think Mikel would have loved to have been 3 to the good after an hour and been able to bring on Ethan or maybe even a Max. But you know, we also have a very big squad, and so the problem is you've got players like Nørgaard and Saka and Rice and Timber on the bench. You might want to get some minutes in their legs just from a periodization standpoint. You don't really know how they're thinking about that sort of stuff. Éze, you know, wanting to get minutes and continue development, because I think there are times he looks brilliant. And there are times where you can clearly see he's still kind of learning. But Ethan signed up, so he's not going anywhere. And it is easy to forget how young he and Miles are and get frustrated with lack of opportunity. But were you a little surprised there was no room for him last night?
As it played out, no. But if I look at it from before the match started, you'd be thinking, Nwaneri is going to get to play here. So I would think he's pretty frustrated. But the subs he made were like serious subs, right? One of their best patches was straight after half time, and they kind of had control, had got to grips with the game, were creating chances, crosses going into the box that weren't been super well dealt with. And so like the first subs we make are on 57 minutes and there's no fluff there. It's Rice and Timber to upgrade our overall level of control, right? You bring in Rice because you want to wrestle back control of the game. The next 2 subs are Saka and Éze, which is let's put this to bed. Let's put this game to bed. Let's get that second goal. Let's sort this out. So there wasn't much room at the inn for let's get other players on who want some minutes. So I think your analysis is right. Had we got the second goal we deserved in the first half even, we didn't even need to be 3-0, but 2-0 and a level of control. And it was 1-0 and no control over goings on. Like he kind of had to go up a level. That still wasn't quite enough. So he went up another level and he was kind of out of options in terms of, and like the second strongest period from them was the last 5 or 10 minutes of the game. So he didn't have a lot of margin of error. If, as I said, they had good footballers all over the pitch. Their centre backs were midfielders. So if we didn't have them on the back foot, they were going to have us on the back foot. They were very good at the football.
Yep. Jose Luis Mendilibar, by the way, a former coach of Mikel Arteta's, he said it was great to face him, and it's always a little strange when you face a coach that coached you. As we know, it's, you know, that was an issue. He's struggled against Moyes at times. You know, it's just one of those things. I can understand how that can get in your head a bit.
It's almost like Apocalypse Now, and he's like going up the river, and he's going to face Marlon Brando and the thing with the cow and all the blood, and eventually he's going to have to assassinate him. And he knows it. Marlon Brando knows it. Like the little people up in the mountains, like with all the mud on them.
Yeah,
it's almost like that.
Yeah, the funny thing is, had you not said that, I was going to say the exact same thing. So it's totally same wavelength there. But by the way, like, I mean, he did say something which is really dumb. Mikel did, and that's rare for him. But I have to call it out. He says, "I'm getting older," which I think is good. No, it's not good, Mikel. No, let me tell you, it's not good at all.
I've tried it. It sucks.
0 out of 10 would not recommend.
Turn back, Mikel. Turn back.
I guess it's better than the alternative, which is not getting older, because you want to carry on. Okay, well, I think rather than getting too much further into this, we can wrap with a look ahead to West Ham. I mean, the thing I'll say, Paul, as a final note here is, when you have Bukayo Saka and Declan Rice and Martin Odegaard on the pitch, you start to notice, holy shit, we're really, really good. And like this season, there's been some criticism of our attacking play. But you know what helps your attacking play? Your best attacking players. And Odegaard and Saka, totally on the same wavelength for the goal. I think, to your point, Saka picks out the spot between his legs and finds it. And so, yeah.
Manscaped him. He manscaped him.
He did. But so it's just a reminder that when the absolute elite level players are on the pitch, you're always going to be better and you always want to play with them. West Ham, new manager, Nuno in. I think it's too early for him to have a huge impact, but it's pretty clear that they weren't playing for Graham Potter. They were just an absolute mess. I look at that squad and I'm like, there's some talented players there. We've had run-ins with some of them before. What do you make of this West Ham game coming up? And I think Lucas Paquetá has been a problem for us in the past. Jared Bowen is a good player. We may get to face our old friend Konstantinos Mavropanos at the back. Maybe a little less scary than the other two I mentioned. What do you make of this West Ham battle? And are we going to see all-out attack? Is it going to be Saka and Éze and Gyökeres and Odegaard? And what are we going to see for this one?
I think it's all about us. It's not about them. We just got to put our chances away. Kind of how I've seen this season so far is waiting for Godot, waiting for our attack. I said it a few times in various games where things weren't going for us. We're waiting on a joined up attack, right? And one shouldn't overthink it too much. It's more about this team beginning to find itself in the attacking third. It's not about Gyökeres. It's not about any one or two players. It's just, you can now see it. We have it doesn't matter who's on the pitch. We are flowing into the final third. We are flowing between the lines. We're playing it around the pit. The wave starts far from the shore. Those goals start from deeper on and from how we flow through the thirds. And the attack is joined up. So it's only about, do we create enough chances? It feels like we're going to right now. And do we put them away? So we've scored 2 goals in the last 2 games. The only problem is it hasn't actually been easy to get those 2-0 wins, right? 2-1. But the 2-1 against Newcastle, 2-0 against Olympiacos. We've struggled to get that second goal. We've struggled to turn our chances into end product. But the play is there. So I think that's what the West Ham's game is about. They can still be dangerous, but we should be way too good for them. And it's about us. Who we play, again, I'm less concerned about because everybody seems to be able to do the business at the moment, which is a fantastic spot to be in. And I think the manager has his hands pretty free in terms of who he wants to play with the interlull next week. He can just ask for one more game from whoever it is, and knowing that they're going to go off and do their international thing next week. So I think he has a free hand in terms of picking his lineup. So that's going to be Saka on the right wing. I assume Gyökeres through the middle, even though it's one more game for him, but it seems like he's getting stronger and stronger. So his only question is who's off the left wing, and I guess he's had Trossard there for a couple of games now, so that's likely your attacking player on that side, and then Zubimendi, Rice and Odegaard in midfield. I'm sure he's quite keen to get that 3 starting in a game. Calafiori, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel.
Yeah, I have no idea. I really have no idea. Mikel spoke about the need to be careful with Saka. He had interesting comments about that I want to read to you. On the importance of protecting players with rotation, yes, especially with Bukayo, because he comes from a long-term injury. He played 45, 60, 70 minutes in a really short period, and today it was more risky, so we decided to keep him. Today it was more risky sounds to me like he had information from his medical team saying, we need to ease him back. Something, why would you say today it's more risky, right? There's something that causes him to say that.
I would hope, here's what I hope. As you're saying those words, I'm like, I hope that's because Newcastle was an intense game. Plenty of minutes there. And the game after that, you need to dial it back and you build it up, right? He's not ready to go game after game intense. So I hope that's what that means, as opposed to something unexpected happen. It's just, you got to build. It's a bit like this running thing where you do, you can add 10% every week, but you can't, because that's exponential, right?
Oh, as right, yeah.
As you go, like, you just can't do that. It's actually nothing like 10% a week. And in the fourth week, you actually drop the mileage you do. Like the body can take a certain amount of build up, then you got to drop it back so that it recovers. Like, I don't know where he's on his map in terms of build up, but it could just well be that when you chart it out and you have that level of intensity against Newcastle, the game after that, for where he's at on his build up, needs to be a kind of almost a recovery game. So I hope that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, here's the difference, right? You look at like an Odegaard. Odegaard, you don't have to build back up because the injury was a shoulder. It was an impact injury to the shoulder. You're not as worried about that. With Saka, it's soft tissue, so you worry more about that and training the muscle properly. So I think Odegaard certainly is fine to start. I think what will be interesting to me is that midfield. Is it just Rice, Zubimendi, and Odegaard? The fact that Zubimendi played this game, I have to admit, like, there's a part of me that wonders if he's going to give him the day off, or at least a part of the day off, and start with a midfield that we don't see coming. And the way we played late against Newcastle chasing a goal, and the way Declan Rice played, and some of the, the 17 line breaking passes, whatever the stat was, there's a little weird part of me that wonders if we could see an Odegaard as a Declan Rice midfield against a team. Because look, the thing we know about Nuno wants to just sit deep, compact, and counter, right? That's his way. Now, they had 49% of the ball in his first game against Everton, but Everton had scored in like the 13th minute and they were chasing. So I think it turned into a game where neither team really wanted the ball. But we know Nuno does not want the ball. That is not what he wants. And so we want to pack that attacking area with the kind of players that can pick the lock. And I don't know that you need Rice plus Zubimendi in a situation like that. And if Declan Rice can go chase down Paquetá and, smother him and get him sorted out, then I wonder if there's room for an extra attacker. I mean, Zubimendi went 90 minutes again in this game. Are we really going to start him again? Or is it going to be Nørgaard, Rice, and Odegaard? It feels a little like, I mean, you could play it in this game. I'm not super worried about it, but it feels a little like you could go even one step further. So, Paul, is there any chance in your mind that we could see the very FIFA-esque Rice as a Odegaard midfield, and then, someone like Martinelli or Leo on the left?
Absolutely no chance. Well, of
No
course
chance?
there is.
Okay.
But look, I think he's going to go Zubimendi because he does not have your concern about fatigue or whatever it is. Zubimendi's going to be fine. He plays.
I'm not worried. It's just, it's a lot of, he's played a lot, Paul,
Yeah,
in a new league at a new level. And I don't think he was absolutely right up to the pace on Wednesday. And he's got a guy in Nørgaard who was a captain of his Premier League club just last season who isn't playing at all,
Sure, but I think he's going to back him to have a better game. As simple as that, he'll say, Arteta's done that job. He's had games where he was a little off in midweek. Guess what? He had to play the weekend, and he had a really good game at the weekend. That's kind of a football thing. You snap back. So they'll judge that. But the Rice thing, I think he's going to play Rice in a double pivot with Zubimendi, because despite what you're concerned about them sitting in deep, it gets Calafiori on the pitch, gets Calafiori up the pitch, free to attack, because Rice has him covered, and the Rice Zubimendi thing is his dynamic in midfield. So good point on the Éze thing. It's a question of, does he start Éze or does he bring on Éze after 60 minutes? And it's kind of 50-50 between Trossard, Martinelli versus Éze. Probably Éze is due the start. So, maybe Éze off the left gives you that extra bit of sizzle to break them down that you're looking for, Elliot. But my bet will be Zubimendi. Rice is the double pivot he likes. We've seen that a lot. Almost regardless of who else is on the pitch, he wants to get Zubimendi, Rice, and Calafiori, that particular dynamic. I think he'll lean into that. He's probably quite excited to see a fully informed Odegaard, and he'll just, with Saka on the right, timber. What's not to like? I think he'll just let it rip. And the only flaw in that is, if you're right, that Zubimendi is actually jaded, as opposed to he had a bit of an off game and he's ready to snap back at the weekend. I go for the latter. I think Zubimendi will come back and he'll be a little frustrated he wasn't on it, but he will be by the weekend. I mean, they had that was the first time he played away at St. James's Park. It was a pretty intense game. Would have taken a fair bit out of Zubimendi, and maybe he just relaxed a little too much. This was a game where you could feel relaxed. We started so well that maybe he's kicking himself that he kind of relaxed a bit and then never caught up to it. That's my psychological analysis. And at the weekend, he's going to be chomping at the bit, and he'll have a really good game for us.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that sounds fine to me. I didn't watch the game, but what I see is that West Ham in their last game moved from a 4-2-3-1 to a 4-1-4-1, which I'm sure will be like a 4-5-1 out of possession. And, I think I imagine that's probably what we'll see. The big change, Ward-Prowse didn't play in the game, and Magasa came into midfield. So, maybe a bit more functional, physical running midfield, because Ward-Prowse just obviously doesn't move around the pitch very well, and he's pretty easy to run through. But I think Paquetá is a player, again, who's given us some trouble. Jared Bowen is a player that's given us some trouble. And this fixture has given us some trouble. So we need to exercise some demons. And I think because of some of the demons we have in this fixture, it should let us know, too, if you're 1-0 up, you need to get 2-0 up. And if you're 2-0 up, you need to get 3-0 up. Because it was a couple seasons ago that we were 2-0 up, and we did get pegged back. I don't think, obviously a very different team, but Mikel has all of the pre-match comments prepared if he needs them to warn them about what could happen. And obviously we'll have a lot of ways we can change it from the bench. So I'm expecting the front three to be Gyökeres, Saka, and you know what, Paul? I don't know. And this is where I think we're going to learn a lot in a way.
I feel like it's the only position I don't know. Of course, I could be wrong, but that's the only one I don't know. That left.
Yeah, what I mean is, was Eberechi Éze bought, as I thought, to take that left wing position and make it his, or not? Because we've seen him play probably more in midfield to this point, but now Odegaard is back, and I don't know. I'm really curious. Is it Leo? Is it Nelly? Or is it Éze? And if it's not Éze, I think it tells you a little bit about how Mikel sees Éze. By the way. Probably more as a midfield option and a rotational option at left wing, but we'll see. I think he'll probably start there, and it'll be Zubimendi, Rice, and Ødegaard, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was Nørgaard. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Rice, Éze, and Ødegaard. I think given Zubi playing 90 minutes in midweek and Nørgaard not even coming on, maybe there'll be a little bit of a surprise there. I do think it'll be the back to the regular back four in Raya. So we'll see. We'll have an instant reaction from Chicago, which would be fun. Paul and I together, we'll get the thoughts of Clive from the ground. The voice notes, by the way, if you've not done instant reaction, Tim's voice note following the Newcastle game was epic. Tomorrow we have John McKenzie and Clive on to do a tactical deep dive onto what has changed about Arsenal this season. So can't wait for that. And then a main pod again on Monday. So I think that's plenty on the midweek stuff. And thanks for riding it out with us on this one. We will endeavor to do even better on the next one. Paul, thank you.
Woohoo!
Thanks very much for listening, everybody. My name is Elliot Smith. We love you. And we will talk after Arsenal 10, West Ham.